All right. Well, hey, before we get too deep into the conversation you hear, I just wanted to point out that hey, here at CCC News, we were thinking about all you folks who have been affected by the Rowena fire, and you've either lost homes or have homes that have been damaged or smoke damage, that kind of thing. We here at CCC News just recently put out a fire relief donation page with a list of different locations where you can either drop things off for our neighbors and friends or also go and pick things up if you need them. But yeah, so as we were chatting a little bit about that, Yahir here was talking about his family, and I believe you guys have a house in the Rowena area.
Yeah, we live on Highway 30.
How are you guys doing? Are you okay?
Yeah, we're definitely better now. Sort of the situation has been improving. We're kind of being able to relax a little bit more, but it's been a very tense last couple of days.
Yeah. I think you said you got into town on Friday, maybe or so.
Yeah, so I got into town on Friday, and I think the fire started Wednesday.
Yeah, Wednesday. Yeah. So what was it like were you able to even go to your home when you got here?
I think they were okay. So I heard about the fire on Wednesday, and my dad was keeping me updated.
Yeah.
It was kind of scary because he's like, "Oh, there's a fire nearby." And that's all I heard. And then the next message was, "We're getting evacuated. It's really bad."
Oh, boy.
Like sending me photos.
Mm-hmm.
The smoke looked really bad. The house in front of us actually did end up catching fire. And he was sending me a video of that because he was trying to stay behind and try to fend off the flames.
Your dad did?
Yeah, my dad tried to stay behind.
So he's out there with the hose or putting on sprinklers and...
He tried doing that, and then the power went out. And so our power to our well and everything just kind of...
Yeah.
Stopped operating, so he's like, "No, I have to get out of here."
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, when I landed on Friday, I did come back to Rowena, and there were firefighters sort of blocking out the exit.
Yeah,
and they allowed us in because it was open to local traffic.
Okay,
just I'm not able to get in, pick up a couple of stuff, and then kind of take things easy. But yeah, it was pretty bad.
Yeah, and the house is still your house didn't burn, I take.
Thankfully, no.
Yeah.
It did get close. There was our backyard is very scorched,
mm-hmm.
But the firefighters came in and drew the fire line, and that's what stopped it from getting to our house. But yeah, thankfully we made it through. But I know there's lots of our neighbors didn't make it through. Lots of close friends and family didn't make it through, or at least their houses. Pretty
bummer. Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that your family's safe and sound and that. And boy, a big thanks to all the firefighters, the emergency responders that got out there and did a really good job.
Huge thank you to the firefighters and all the emergency crew.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, we'll jump into the introduction. Let's talk a little bit about Harvard and the Dalles High School and all that good stuff here.
Sounds good.
All right. All right, welcome to the CCC News Podcast. We have a special guest today here, a real treat. Yahir Santillan-Guzman. Did I say that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
All right, very good. Yahir is a 2021 graduate of the Dalles High School today, and he's going to be chatting with us a little bit about what he's been up to the last 4 years. 4 years ago, Yahir Santillan-Guzman sat in his computer in the Dalles, nervously staring down the final seconds before a Harvard admissions decision would hit his inbox. A first-generation college student and valedictorian of the Dalles High School, Yahir had applied on a whim, calling it a full court, blindfolded, behind-the-back kind of shot. I remember that just so vividly, Yahir. When the letter of acceptance arrived, he and his family erupted in disbelief and celebration. Now, that improbable dream has come full circle. This spring, Yahir crossing the stage in Cambridge, Massachusetts, officially earning his degree from Harvard in economics. Quite an accomplishment. Yahir is the son of immigrants, raised in a tight-knit West Side neighborhood and lifted by a community of teachers, mentors, and family. Yahir's journey from preschool at Oregon Child Development Coalition to Harvard Yard is a story of grit, grace, and growth. But beyond the Ivy League, that prestige, his story is also about what it means to belong, to persist, and to carry others with you. So, well, thank you so much for coming today, Yahir. Did I get those things right? Am I close?
Yeah, I mean, if memory serves me correct, that all sounded right to me. So, yeah, thank you for having me here. I'm excited. Glad to be back. Yeah.
It's been so quick. I remember you as just a young graduate out of the Dalles High School in 2021, coming to our first news office over just a block away from here.
Yeah.
And the thrill of that moment. I remember watching the video of you and your mom and your sister as you were getting that notice of whether you'd been accepted to Harvard or not, and the elation and the celebration. Can you take us back to that minute for a second?
Oh man, yeah, time flew by real quick. Yeah, so that was, I believe, on April 6th, 2021, around 4 p.m., a little bit after 4 p.m. We knew the decisions were coming out at that time, obviously, and I remember my mom wanted to record. She wanted to record me opening the letter. And I said, absolutely not. This is going to be so embarrassing. It's going to be a rejection. I don't want that on video. So I told her to not record me. And then up until then, I had been recording all my other college acceptances. So I thought it would be weird if I didn't record this one.
Right. Gotta have consistency.
Exactly, for consistency's sake. So I set up a little phone, or my phone, like on a little stand, just like quickly. But I was like, guys, it's gonna be whatever. Yeah. And then I go to the Harvard website and I, type in my login, and I check what's it like, check admissions decision.
Yeah.
And I opened it up and I saw a big congratulations. And I was like, I just froze up. I was like, am I reading this correctly? Did I click on the wrong link? Like, what is this? And then I read a little more and I saw welcome to the class of 2025. And I jumped off my seat. On my way up, I remember I hit the table.
Yeah.
That's why my phone fell over. And then my mom and my sister saw my reaction and they ran over to the laptop and they saw the big congratulations with confetti. And they also got really excited. And
it was amazing because it was a disbelief for you too, but also like a kind of collectively, the folks that had brought you to that point, some of your teachers, Mary Jo Comerford, like you were talking about, I think one of your mentors, Bill Noonan, back then.
Yeah.
But I mean, the whole series of folks that, teachers, and you said you mentioned some friends that kind of helped you kind of break out of some shyness in high school.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I had a really big support network all throughout, way back to middle school. Starting in middle school, I had a really big support network with the Juntos program. That's where I met my mentor, Andrea. She was the one who kind of guided me into how to hit high school running, where to get involved, what colleges look for, and just have sort of the college admissions process in mind at a very early age. And then, I got to high school, and then all the teaching staff, I remember Mr. Taylor. Jim Taylor was my first AP teacher. Mr. Ton, of course, Colby Ton, shout out. Miss Pearson, who I believe now is Miss Bell.
Yes, correct.
Miss Bell, Miss
just I think celebrated her first anniversary yesterday.
There you go. Well, congratulations to her. Well, to me she's still Miss Pearson, but I guess I should say Miss Bell, right?
Yeah.
But Miss Bell, Miss Comerford. Miss Kaiser, all the teaching staff at the Dalles High School really supported me all throughout. They were the ones who kind of really instilled in me the importance of school. I think early on in high school, and Mr. Ton can attest, I was kind of like, I did well in school, but I was still kind of like, whatever, right? It's just school. It's not that big of a deal. They were the ones who kind of pushed me to take my academics a little bit more seriously. Yeah. Which obviously turned out quite well for me. Yeah. And then,
just a finer point on that. Yeah. My high school career is probably the antithesis of yours, but I think that the thing that you pointed out to me 4 years ago was that how important it was to start off running in ninth grade. Like, really kind of making sure you were hitting all your marks early on when you got through you're going through that first year of high school, and then also the extracurricular activities you talked about, like sports and they were really important in that probably that application to Harvard.
Oh,
Right?
for sure. Yeah. I mean, like I mentioned, I did pretty well in school up until or before I started high school, but it was never like I intentionally. Well, I guess I did. Obviously, I tried in school. Right? I'm not gonna say I didn't try, but it was just kind of, I don't know, it came naturally, not you know, in a sense. But through the Juntos program, they were the ones who really told me that, you know, up until middle school, your grades are whatever. But starting freshman year of high school, your grades are super important for college admissions. You want to, you know, get your straight A's from the first day, from the jump.
Yeah.
And so from then on, I was like, okay, you know, let me try a little bit more. And then they also emphasize the extracurriculars, as you mentioned. Get involved with clubs on campus, with organizations in the community. Sports are really big, you know, boost for applications. And so I started looking for that. Started looking for those opportunities more and more.
I think you tennis, and did you play? What were some of the other sports you did?
Yeah, I mean, I only did soccer and tennis.
Yeah, okay.
Tennis I did for a couple of years,
Right.
and then soccer I did I did 3 years, then senior year I didn't participate.
Do you still play tennis? Out of curiosity.
Recreationally.
Yeah, all right.
I gathered some friends around and hit the courts, but not too intense. Nothing like the Dalles High School varsity tennis. But yeah.
Wow. Well, fascinating. So it's kind of an amazing story going from the Dalles, Oregon, to one of the biggest cities, you know, in the U.S. and Cambridge, Mass, with Boston, essentially. Can you tell me a little bit about like your first day, you know, at Harvard? Tell me about your first day on campus. Maybe not so much about the process, maybe about the social interaction. And let me ask this and just put it in kind of in kid size. Was it similar to your first day in first grade in any way?
Ooh, first grade. I don't think I had a memory in first grade. Let's see. Well,
How about your first day in middle school?
first day of middle school. That's also a long time ago. I remember being very nervous. Very nervous when I got to campus because I think when I think when a lot of people think of Harvard, they think of extremely intelligent students. They think of maybe a little bit of pretentiousness. And so these were expectations that I had going as I got to campus. And so I was really worried about how I would fit in, whether I was able to find my community, things like that, right?
Yeah.
And so I remember landing on campus and I kind of just seeing the students around and kind of being really worried about, oh my God, there's not many people that look like me. I think especially coming from the Dalles where we have a really big agricultural industry, you know, there's lots of immigrants here in the town. And when I got to Harvard, when I got to Boston, when I got to Harvard, I didn't really see much of that.
Yeah.
And so I immediately got more worried.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
Okay.
You know, there's not many Hispanics here. I got to branch out.
Yeah.
But I got to campus, moved in, met my roommate, all that. And later that evening, I started walking around and just sort of talking to people, meeting students. And I immediately became really surprised by how down to earth and normal, per se, in quotations, how normal these students were. And that was a sentiment that was shared by a lot of the students there. Because I think everyone went in with that same expectation.
Right.
And we were all kind of surprised by how just, you know, normal 18-year-olds we all were.
Yeah, I get, you know, with those first kind of conversations, you're kind of breaking down all those perceptions you're coming in with, right?
Exactly.
Like, oh, we're pretty much human here. We're all, you know, kind of.
Exactly. We're all just like
a little bit scared, all but probably most of you.
We're all scared. We're all kind of nervous, but we're all still teenagers.
Yeah.
I remember when we first started cracking the first jokes, we were all kind of like, whoa, I didn't know Harvard students had this type of humor. And then we all kind of realized, oh, we're just normal. It's not that deep. Yeah.
Yeah. Huh, wild. Now, did you take a plane over or did you drive over to?
No, it's a long drive. Yeah.
Right.
No, we flew over. It's a 6-hour flight. Which this is far. It's far. But yeah, 6-hour flight.
Did your folks go with you?
Yes, they helped me move in.
Okay, so
it was the first.
So your dad Jose and your mom, help me again. Elita, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
My whole family, my sister also went.
All right.
We explored Boston together, and then got to Harvard Yard and walked around. Took some pictures, of course, here and there, and it was. They had a great time. It was the first time they had been to the East Coast, to North Carolina, but that was the first time in the Northeast.
Yeah.
So it was a little bit different, but
Yeah.
Very nice. Yeah.
Yeah, we were kind of talking about that before the podcast. Like I've been to Chicago. That's about as far east as I've gone. But there are, a lot of cultural differences, obviously, between the Pacific Northwest and
for sure.
the Northeast. And we were kind of chatting about, like I know Chris Bothier from Dalles here now, and my Uncle Tony is from Boston, and that, and they're more upfront,
sure.
and great and really fun to talk to. And we kind of went back and forth, and you were kind of saying, like, there's a kindness there, or you could tell me a little bit like that.
Yeah, so the way I've heard it been described as is that people in the East they're not nice. They are not nice, but they're kind. Mm-hmm. So they will be a lot more upfront about it. They're not afraid to cuss you out on the street. They're not really going to sort of like say hi as you're walking down the street.
Yeah.
But if in times of need, if there's anything you ever need, like they will be there to help you out.
Right.
And I heard of that before I got to East Coast, and I got there and I immediately found that to be true.
Yeah.
I think here, especially in the Dalles, we have a very small community. We all kind of know each other.
Yeah.
It's very easy to go to, like, say Fred Meyer's, and it's like, oh, you bump to someone, hey, how are you doing? Like, catch up, right?
Yeah, it's hard to get through Fred Meyer, in less than 2 hours.
Exactly, yeah. My dad actually likes going to Fred Meyer's just to see who he bumps into and talk to people.
That's awesome.
But yeah, on the East Coast, you're not really gonna have that. Everyone's kind of in their own schedule. They won't, maybe you'll get a quick like, hey, but everyone's kind of in their own world.
And they got things to get accomplished.
Things to do, places to be.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, very good. Let's see what was the most surprising part about living and studying in Cambridge? Like, were you in the dorms? I take it.
Yeah, I was in dorms all 4 years.
Okay. Yeah.
It's very rare for students at Harvard to live off campus, which I think is very unique to Harvard.
That is. That's kind of like the first thing that happens when kids go to college. It's like, how can I get an apartment?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Second year usually.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of my friends who went to like U of O and OSU, they're like after the first year, it's like, okay, time to rent an apartment.
Right.
Like they're going through that whole process, and
and there's a huge learning curve to that.
Yeah,
and that can't take away from your studies.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, now that I'm like done with college, I'm looking to move away, and I'm now barely starting to get into that whole look for an apartment process. I'm like, oh man,
right?
All my friends already have this down because they've been doing that through college, and I'm kind of barely starting on that. But yeah, I lived on campus all 4 years in the dorms. Yeah.
So when you say that leads me to a real quick. Are you looking at moving back into Oregon at this point? Or?
For the time being, I'll be in Oregon, but I think I am looking for jobs outside of Oregon, continue exploring, continue sort of seeing what's out there in the world.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Well, hey, maybe this is a good moment. We're going to take a quick break here, and we'll come right back and keep exploring, your years at Cambridge and at Harvard. And yeah, fantastic.
Yeah, sounds good.
Hey, Josh, did you know that we are funded by our readers in large part?
I did know that, but please tell me more.
Yeah, it's our local readers here that make it possible for us to go out and gather news on local businesses and important issues in our community. And so we need people to support local news. Did you know you can make a difference in our community's economy and culture by supporting local journalism? I bet you did. But maybe you out there don't. And so you should visit our Support Us page at CCCNews.com to subscribe to a monthly donation to keep news local and start making a difference in our community today. Again, that's CCCNews.com.
And remember, CCC News is available for everyone and funded by readers.
All right, and we're back. Well, we're talking with Yahir Guzman here, recent graduate of Harvard, and obviously a graduate of the Dalles High School prior to that. When we were off camera, we were just chatting a little bit about our different experiences. I went to a Western Oregon State College back in 91 was my first year. And maybe let's chat a little bit about maybe the similarities and the things that aren't so similar about my experiences and yours.
Yeah.
So in that first year, I came in and I was able to get an apartment right off the bat. I didn't have to live in student housing or anything like that. And I didn't seem like there was a real strong social our culture there at that school. We had a union where people would meet and that kind of thing, but it was kind of up to you to figure out, who you're going to hang out with or that kind of thing. What was your experience like?
That is very interesting because I think that is very different to what it is like at Harvard. At Harvard, you have housing guaranteed for all 4 years. And actually, the housing is very big, if not the biggest part of the Harvard experience, or at least one of the biggest parts. I don't know if you've seen Harry Potter, but you know how they're separated into the houses, Slytherin, Gryffindor, all that.
Slithering and yes.
Yeah, exact same thing. We have the exact same thing in which we're separated into 12 different undergraduate houses. And you get sorted into these houses your freshman year. And once you get placed into a house, you live in that house for the rest of your 3 years there.
Okay.
And each house has their own different culture. Each house has their own different quirks.
Yeah.
And you become really close with the people in your house. They're called houses. They're really just dorms. But yeah, it's a really big part of the Harvard experience, and that's why a lot of people don't live off campus, because you're going to miss out on that house experience.
Yes.
And yeah,
I felt like I missed that entirely in my college years.
Yeah.
There wasn't that sense of community. Did you guys have pretty good like meeting centers in each dorm where you could all get together and do things?
Yeah. Every house has their dining hall, so we have 12 dining halls. Each house has their gym. Each house has their library. Each house has their own amenities,
right?
Including common spaces where you're able to gather with your friends and things like that, study. Each house hosts events as well. For example, so I lived in Kirkland House. Shout out Kirkland House, and they're known for we're one of the smallest houses at Harvard. So we have a very strong knit community, and we have lots of very quirky events. But one of my favorite things that the house held was a beer seminar, in which they introduced us to beers from all over the world. Talked about a little bit of beer history.
See, I missed all that.
Yeah, it's a lot of cool things going on. Wine seminar. We had a whiskey seminar.
Wow,
which was very interesting. We had lots of speakers come into the house.
Yeah,
very sort of
people with doctorates or somebody experts in their field kind of thing, right?
Yeah, like I think the last one that we had this year was like former White House chief of staff.
Oh wow,
former White House chief of staff.
Okay.
But we have a wall here at Kirkland House. We have a wall with posters of everyone that has come to Kirkland House, and it's people ranging from Shakira to Salma Hayek, to people like Hillary Clinton, Pete Buttigieg, but across the spectrum from pop culture icons to more like high profile politicians.
And that exposure in your mind, is that exposure just almost as important or equally important as to what you're learning in class or doing? Yeah,
I would say that's probably the most important thing that you get at a university like Harvard. I think 1 + 1 is going to equal 2, no matter if you learn that at Harvard or at CGCC. But I think what a university like Harvard gets you is the exposure to these type of people. The exposure to that type of network. Like for example, my introductory econ class was taught by the chief economist under the Obama administration. Wow. And those are the econ concepts are going to be the same, but it's just like the experience and that he brings and the anecdotes that he would talk about during his time at the White House. Is something that's very unique to a university like Harvard, and I think that's where the real value in these universities come from.
Yeah, fascinating. Yeah, all of my favorite professors from college, which this is very similar, were able to anecdotally, talk about either the authors that we were reading, or they were just so well informed, and there was just a certain depth of learning there that it's very valuable.
100%.
Yeah.
Like this previous, I guess this past spring, I took a class on the financial system, and in this class we went into depth into the 2008 recession, and it was just
that was the housing crash
Yeah,
and
the
the
housing
derivatives
crash,
and the poor loans that were kind of being created back then. Okay.
Exactly. And the class was taught by one of the advisors to the Federal Reserve, and to the Treasury.
Yeah.
And so obviously he had incredibly deep expertise about the subject matter.
Yeah.
And we were able to ask a lot of questions about very minute details that he would just say would answer like boom, 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 because he quite literally led through that.
Yeah.
Led the nation through that.
Oh my gosh! So I have a very poignant memory from Western Oregon State College when I was in an economics class, and they were talking about the Fed and setting the interest rate, right? And they said, yeah, well, they're an autonomous group, and they are not influenced by the leaders, the president of the United States and that kind of thing. So, did that discussion crop up during that course?
Yes, actually.
And did you guys come to any conclusion of whether that is an autonomous, a group of financial people, or is it influenced by the president and the administration?
Well, I mean, I'm sure there's maybe slight inchings of influence, but generally speaking, the Federal Reserve is an autonomous group, and I think that's something that makes the American economy so resilient, is because our monetary policy is not linked to the 4-year calendar that the politicians run on. So we're able to do what is best for the economy and for the growth of the American economy, rather than follow a political agenda.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important, and it was definitely a topic that arose during, I guess, these previous months, where there was talks about firing the head of the chair.
Right, Jerome Powell, right? And so Trump was putting some pressure on, or at least he was stating publicly that he wished that the rates would go down, so that. But Jerome held fast, and so you can see demonstrations of it. I think it ebb and wanes depending on who's in and who's out. Every personality is different. These are all humans, right?
Of course, yeah. They each have their slightly different philosophy, but I think overall it's definitely for the better to be an autonomous, independent group.
Yeah, fascinating. I'm trying to think back. In your first year of courses, I felt like in my work, anyways, that there were certain core classes you had to take, in a liberal arts degree, and one of them, music, introduction to modern art, some things like that. I felt like those were kind of hung on the outside, weren't given as much credence as maybe some of the more core degrees. Like I was getting an English degree. I thought the English degree department was great. But how did you feel about that experience for you? I take it you probably had a PE requirement. I don't know. But, did you have an art requirement? Did you have a music? I mean, and how did those classes that weren't in your general degree, like economics, those probably, you had to have it to graduate from Harvard, I'm sure. But how do you feel like they did on those kinds of courses?
I think that, we do have a very similar system.
Okay.
With us, it's called the General Education System. And with the Gen Ed system, you had to take courses in, let's see if I remember, it was civics, so it was like a science course, a history course, and a civics and ethics course. And they weren't, like how you mentioned, they weren't necessarily taken as seriously as, your core concentration courses. But a lot of people saw them as a really good opportunity to explore beyond their concentration. I personally really enjoyed them. I think that I picked very interesting courses. For example, the most recent one I took was on ancient Egyptian history, which is completely separate from anything that I was studying or anything that I had even considered studying. So it was a really good way for me to sort of expose myself to new topics, new ways of thinking. But what was the second part of your question?
Oh, just if you felt like they did a pretty good job and they had selected good professors and
100%. I think the Gen Ed at Harvard are taught by professors who are very passionate about that
Yes,
topic. Very
right.
passionate. Like, for example, my Egyptian history professor was taught by a Egyptologist who spent a lot of time in Egypt and like actually doing like the
Yes.
archaeologist work. He was the head
awesome.
curator for the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, which is one of the most important museums in the country.
Yeah.
And so he obviously brought a lot of expertise, brought a lot of just general like passion for the topic. I remember my other general education course was one titled Conflict Resolution, and it was essentially it had lots of different aspects, but one of the biggest aspects of the class was negotiation and sort of learning how to strategize and come up with different tactics when talking to a counterparty, whether that be in like a very serious political scenario or just like a salary negotiation, things like that. And the course was taught by the head of the negotiation program at the Harvard Law School, and he was an ex-negotiator for the FBI. So he had been in like these very high-stress, tense scenarios, and he was able to talk a little bit about those experiences and sort of walk us through his strategy. And that was very interesting to me. That's actually one of my favorite courses that I took at Harvard, and
Maybe inspired you to want to go into law.
maybe so. Yeah, that's played a role, but
That's what a general education course is intended to do, right? Like, there's never a straight line. Like, you may, like, I remember you were saying you were pretty darn good at math, before you took off. And I was thinking, oh, maybe he got a degree in applied mathematics, or I didn't know, where you ended up. But that's the thing about learning, right? Is there's no straight lines, it zigs and zags, and that's how you find out who you are, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Actually, they don't even let us declare a concentration until the ending of our sophomore fall.
Yeah.
Because they want you to explore. They want you to take courses, computer science, take a course in government, take a course in econ, see what you really like.
Yeah.
And then once you figure out what it is that you want to do, then they allow you to declare. But
That's the true liberal arts experience.
Yeah.
That's how it's supposed to be.
Exactly.
I kind of went in with the idea, I liked journalism. I liked it in high school. And so I kind of had a pretty clear idea what I wanted to do. And that probably wasn't the healthiest perspective to go into college with. I think, at least I wasn't as open maybe to other ideas.
yeah.
It felt like it was a practical way to apply an English degree.
yeah, whatever makes sense, right? But even one of my closest friends went through exactly that. She went in as pre-med. And so off the get-go, she thought she wanted to be a doctor, and so she went on the pre-med route, studied neuroscience, went through all those difficult STEM courses. And her senior spring, she had a moment and she realized that's not what she wanted to do at all. From some of the courses that she had taken, she saw that she was more passionate about other topics. And so her senior spring, after going through the pre-med route, after studying neuroscience, she decided to abandon that and go through another field. It was...
What did she end up choosing? Do you remember?
She wants to now go to law school.
See? It's like 180 shift, right?
Yeah, completely 180. And
Good for her.
Yeah, no, it was amazing. I'm very happy for her. She's very excited to have found that. And I guess it just goes to your point about how when people go into college with a very preset image of what they want to do, it sort of blocks them from exploring and maybe finding something that they enjoy a lot more.
Yeah. Hey, did you have this experience? Every time I would go to sign up for courses, there were courses I absolutely wanted to take, but they conflicted with my core studies, and so you couldn't get them, or it was just, scheduling's difficult. Colleges, there's a lot of expectation, and there's only so much room and so many time slots, right?
Yeah.
So did you have that problem? It's pretty common to most schools. I hear it from people who've gone to all different schools. So.
Yeah. The scheduling conflict is, it's a big thing. Obviously, you want to take lots of courses, and sometimes they overlap.
Yes.
There is a thing where they allow you to take overlapping courses, and they have like a ranking of if you're taking two courses, which one you have to attend and which one you can take asynchronously.
Yeah.
So that's an option.
So what, you go to a course one day and you go to the other course the other day and kind of split it in two?
Yeah, you could do that.
And then keep up maybe with an online
and then you have to
app or something.
Do the other course on your own time and figure that out.
Well, that's better than not getting it, you
exactly. know? Some courses don't allow that. Obviously, it varies case by case, but...
Right, especially a 400 level course or something.
Yeah, like a higher level course might be a little more difficult, but... But I think one of the biggest things that my friends found unique or weird about the Harvard enrolling system is that we don't have limited space. I think a lot of big universities, like their classes fill up really quick.
Exactly.
You have to be like, as soon as it opens up, enroll, right?
Right.
We don't really have that at all. There's courses with limited slots, but those courses are genuinely lotteried. So you have to enter a lottery for that, and then they run a lottery, and then it's completely luck based. But most courses are pretty open, and in fact, up until last year, we didn't enroll until a week before school started. Whereas a lot of universities, they enroll, have their schedule set. It's like
kind of seems like
months in advance.
I think we would. It seemed like as soon as a term was over, then we would within the week or so have set up. So like at the end of spring term, we would get set up for fall. I don't remember that.
Yeah, that's how we are now. They completely changed the system, and it was kind of met with controversy, but yeah.
Fascinating. All right. Well, hey, we're going to take another break, and we'll be right back after a little news from our sponsors. Hey.
Tell me about advertising at CCC News.
All right. We've been on a real roll lately. We're up to 110,000 unique readers this month.
That's insane.
It's insane. And these are all people that are customers for our local readers in the community.
That's huge.
Yeah. So we do advertisements, digital advertisements that are rotated through all of our stories. Think of it like this. Every time we have a great headline rolling out there and people are reading the story, your advertisement can be right next to it.
That's awesome. How many views does advertisers get every month?
Well, they're averaging somewhere between 50 and 60,000 per month.
Ooh, if I was to buy 60,000 impressions somewhere else, that might be like really expensive. Is that right?
It would be, but thank goodness we're CCC News and we're offering people great value. We can get advertising going for folks for $300 month to month. But if you're willing to go a little bit longer, say a 6-month or a 12-month contract, we can get those prices down to $250 a month.
That's amazing. Great. How can people get in touch?
Oh, well, easy. You just contact me, Tom, at cccnews.com. Again, that's Tom at cccnews.com. Or you can reach me at 541-980-2756.
I'm going to tell all my friends.
Right on. Hit. All right, and we're back. We're here with Yahir Santillan-Guzman, a recent graduate of Harvard. He's a hometown favorite here in the Dalles, a graduate from the Dalles High School in 2021. And so we're just chatting it through. We're kind of talking a little bit off camera here about, campus life and that kind of thing. Did you get involved in a lot of different clubs and things like that at Harvard? Did you have some things that were interesting to you?
Yeah, I did. I did broaden my horizons a little bit while on campus, which I guess is what college is about, right?
Yeah.
But I'd say, I was involved in a couple of clubs. I would say my two biggest time commitments were the Harvard Crimson, which is the on-campus newspaper.
Oh.
And it's this pre-professional organization called the Harvard Latinos in Finance and Technology, which basically served to expose sort of first-generation low-income students to professional fields such as finance, technology, law, things like that.
Yeah. Interesting. That's cool. So did you write? Were you a reporter or did you?
I was a photographer, actually.
Okay.
I was a photographer, so I got to attend lots of events around campus. And as you can imagine, there's lots of events on campus happening all the time. I think I did a lot of the more whenever high-profile politicians would come on campus, I was the one taking photographs for those events. I think the most high profile politician I got to photograph was the South Korean president, or I guess now ex South Korean president, former.
Yeah.
Got impeached quite recently.
You're right.
But he was on campus, and I got to attend his event and go through the back doors, and
Oh my
kind of
goodness.
be among the photographers for that. So
Were you working in that, or were you doing that job or working in that capacity up until your recent graduation?
yeah, I took it a little more slower senior year, but I think up until junior year I was still
So
involved with that.
some of the protests and that kind of thing, were you involved in any of that?
It
Taking
was-
shots or?
Yeah, so it was kind of a scary time on campus because when I was involved with the photography, that we had a really big issue with student safety.
Okay.
There was a truck. I don't know if you saw in the news, but there was a truck going around just circling the yard, sort of just and doxing students. They were displaying the faces of students and kind of like dropping even their hometown address,
Yeah.
what they're involved in and what they were involved with at school, where they live, things like that.
Yeah.
It was a very sort of scary time to be involved in that.
Yeah.
in those sort of protests.
Did you feel somewhat vulnerable being out there with a camera?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Isn't that-
I mean, even being photographed with like the solidarity events that were going on campus was a really big thing.
Yeah.
So I did not explicitly like my name isn't listed on these sort of
Sure.
photographs, but
Yeah.
there was lots of events going around campus for sure. Yeah.
I have some empathy for that because there's oftentimes situations where, not oftentimes, but occasionally we get thrown into some things, and
Yeah.
you feel like, well, do I have a target on my back?
Yeah.
At this point, am I being associated and somehow looked at in a different way? And it can be that way when you're doing things that are pretty controversial.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
During this time period, Harvard was kind of in the eye of the hurricane because this was when our also former president had her congressional testimony, which was also met with a lot of backlash.
Yes.
From
We
Congress.
were talking about that, and the federal government attempted to withhold $9 billion, I think, in research. And
that was a
grants.
more recent development as
Yeah.
well. So, yeah, there's lots of stuff. There's lots of stuff going on campus.
Yeah.
never a dull moment in these past 3 years, but
Well, it keeps it exciting, I guess, one way or another.
that's one way to put it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, interesting. So, were there moments? That's one definitely, but the moments that really made you proud to be from the Dalles while you were there.
That was,
Yeah.
I mean,
Did you bring a certain perspective that maybe was not held, was maybe lacking or wasn't as vocal maybe? Or
yeah, I think a lot of the experience I had, I was very valued in class discussions and just on campus was the more agricultural, I guess, perspective that I had.
yeah.
I mean,
Give a little bit about your dad's background and that kind of thing.
yeah. So when my dad got to the U.S., he worked in a lot of different fields. Everything from blueberries. Sorry.
Yeah.
Everything from blueberries to cherries to wheat, pears, apples. The whole farmers market range.
Yeah.
And my mom had a very similar experience as well. That's how she started out, and then she spent a couple years down at the cherry growers,
right?
Growers.
Yep.
And now she's currently working at Goodwill. And then, sorry.
No, that's fine. Go ahead, take a drink. Join you.
But yeah, and then I mean a lot of the youth here, during high school they also get into the cherry orchard during the cherry season, which is now I think in full force.
Yeah.
So I had some of that experience, and that's something that was very, very unique. Very unique on campus. Obviously a lot of students from the backgrounds that a lot of the students that are from the backgrounds that attend Harvard,
Yeah.
they don't really have that experience. They don't really know what that's like.
Right.
And so I think that I did bring a very unique perspective that was very valued amongst my peers. And I think that was something that that's what Harvard was looking for.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons why I got in, just because of the unique perspective that I bring, or that I brought. I
Very
guess.
valuable.
Yeah. And so I would say that was probably the biggest source of pride for me.
Right on.
Dalles and
Yeah.
kind of experience.
When I was growing up a kid, my parents would always send me out to the wheat farms here in Eastern Oregon to drive truck, pick rock, pull ride, do all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I can relate, and it did give me a very unique perspective. Neither one of my brothers nor my sister did that, but I did, and it definitely shaped me in a different way. And
For sure.
and it really shows you how much labor and difficulty there is in producing this nation's food and providing, for the overall communities. It's a major effort.
100%, yeah. And I think on top of like the perspective about labor and how hardworking these people are, I think it also provided me a very interesting perspective with regards to rural life. I mean, a lot of the students there are, from big cities. I had a lot of friends from New York, LA. You mentioned Chicago.
Yeah.
And I think growing up in a rural town, that's also just a very unique perspective. I remember when I would tell people I grew up. Well, first of all, they were surprised to hear I was from Oregon, because I think a lot of them have never even interacted with someone from Oregon, and I would always get met with things like Oregon, like what is that? Like,
where is that?
Is that what, trees and Twilight? Like there's what is there in Oregon?
Yeah, we always get the Twilight thing,
The
don't we?
Twilight thing was a really really big reference.
Yeah.
My friend was surprised to hear we had an airport. I was like, what'd you expect? What?
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, they were very, very surprised just to learn about Oregon as a whole. But more so also about the rural life. Living in town with population around 16,000-ish. That was something completely unheard of, and obviously that brings a lot of different challenges, different perspectives, different things to consider.
Yeah.
And so that was also very valuable to bring up in class discussion, especially in a lot of my econ courses where, like for example, I took a class titled Economics of Cities, and obviously a lot of the discourse is centered around cities and how these cities came to be.
Yes.
I think I brought very interesting points about, rural life and how it's a little bit different, how these towns developed a little bit differently.
Yeah.
I think that was really valued also.
I think that one of the major differences between rural and city life is like in a rural community, everybody's got to, a lot more people have to contribute, and you have to be more self-sustaining, if you will, or ruggedly independent is kind of another way I'd frame that. Like if you go to a small community like Condon, Oregon, or something like that, you either got to be on the fire department or you got to be volunteering here or there, or so your communities simply just don't work. Yeah, it's kind of in a dense society like Boston or New York, everybody's got their job, and it's just higher tax revenues. It's just a lot more that you can. It's very different.
Yeah,
I don't know if I'm describing that well enough, but
it's a completely different world. So, yeah, I completely understand.
Yeah. Huh. Well, very good. Well, did you get over to New York quite often?
I never really visited, but I did get to live in New York this previous summer. I did my internship there, so I spent the summer in New York.
Oh, great. Where'd you intern?
I interned at American Express.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good.
So it was downtown Manhattan, financial district. So it was an experience. I thought the jump from the Dalles to Boston was big, but the jump from Boston to New York was equally as big.
Really?
New York is a completely different level.
Really?
It's one thing to visit, and it's another thing to live there.
Oh, I was putting those all together in the not the same at all.
It's on a different scale, yeah.
Oh, really?
Because I would say Boston is closer to Portland than Boston is to New York.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, New York is in a completely league of its own. Yeah.
So were you living in New York for that time?
Yeah. Technically speaking, I lived in New Jersey, Jersey City. So some people might argue that's not New York, but I spent most of my time in New York.
All right. Yeah. Very good. Well, fascinating. So that kind of does lead me. So you got your degree in economics. What are you hoping to do with that, or do you know where you're gonna? You're in the application process at this point?
Not quite. Okay. Yeah. So I think one of the things that led me to study economics was just how versatile that degree is. A lot of people consider it like they lump it together with business and
Yes.
admin, that sort of finance world. But we're a social science, so we're a lot more theoretical.
Okay.
And sort of the econ framework can apply to so many different fields.
Yeah.
I mean, I took classes, the economics of finance, obviously, but I also took courses in the economics of like psychology, economics of government, economics of public policy. It's very versatile, very applicable.
Yeah.
And so I could really go into, there's lots of doors open for me.
Yeah.
What I'm looking to go into, however, is more of a legal route. I think, or I'm planning on applying to law school within a couple of years. I want
Okay.
to get some work experience first, sort of continue exploring. But I do want to go to law school
Yeah.
in the near future, and then from then on, we'll see. We'll see where that takes me. Yeah.
Wow. Fascinating. Huh. Yeah, I've never thought about economics in that light either.
Yeah.
That it's applicable. It's a social science.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I was actually just having this conversation with my cousin a couple days ago, and she was really surprised to hear that we're not with the business majors. We're in the liberal arts college at most universities.
That's
so.
interesting. My dad's an economics major.
Yeah,
and I
yeah.
never really put
Interesting.
that together. Yeah.
No,
Yeah. Huh. He went to Whitman.
Oh, there you go.
Wow. So let's see. Do you see yourself coming back to Oregon at any point?
Eventually.
Eventually.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think growing up here is very special. And I think something that I didn't appreciate until I left was just how beautiful it is here. You're not going to find geography like this anywhere in the U.S., really. I mean, I guess Washington, but outside of the Northwest, it's very unique, very rare. And I think I missed it as soon as I left.
Yeah.
And so eventually I do want to come back, but I think, my 20s it's my opportunity to be around,
Definitely.
explore different cities. And
Yeah, I recommend that, getting
yeah.
out and seeing and touching as many bases as you can
Exactly.
in your 20s. That's
Yeah.
really a good idea, yeah. So I was kind of looking at it, like, I've just been kind of watching the trends here. Like we here at CCC News are kind of always watching technology and the way things are changing in society and that kind of thing. And like I foresee us, I don't know how we'll be delivering our product 5 years from now, just because of kind of the major changes going in. We were kind of talking about this, like AI and robotics and like, it just, we were talking about like, I think AI is allowing for the mapping of the human DNA, which is going to lead to major changes in healthcare and how that's received, and how diseases are treated. I think longevity, like people are going to live longer, and that. I mean, we just
Yeah.
And you're 22, right?
Yeah.
And it just seems like our world is at the cusp of this just major transition, at least for humanity. We're at this big transition point. In the next 5 years, and we talked about that. As someone entering the world at such a pivotal time, where do you see yourself fitting into that transformation? Or are you still figuring it out?
Yeah, I mean, I do think it's definitely an interesting time to be going into the labor force with all this stuff surrounding AI. I think, you mentioned lots of very interesting applications. I think the medicine field is going to be revolutionized by AI, and sort of the insights that we'll now be able to get from all this information. I think for me, one of the biggest concerns that I have is how much of AI will be labor augmenting versus labor replacing.
Yes.
I think a lot of the concerns are that most of AI will be labor replacing, which of course limits the amounts of jobs that I'll be able to do. I think I've also had lots of conversations with this with my roommates and sort of peers about our prospects, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's scary. It's scary. I think for me, I think I have the opportunity to continue my education and become a lot more specialized in a way that will be hard to replace by AI.
Yeah.
I think that AI is mostly going to affect, I guess, in like what we call in our class as low skill labor, things like data entry, things like maybe some of the more I guess, basic accounting work, things like
Yeah.
that, things that aren't very necessarily like specialized, right?
Yeah.
Whereas more, I guess, I'm using the term specialize a lot.
Right.
But I guess things that require a little bit more education, things that maybe require more human interaction, such as like in the legal practice, you require a lot of client and face-to-face interaction. I think that's where I am aiming to go, and where I think AI will be more labor augmenting. I guess speaking from the perspective of a lawyer. I mean, I'm not a lawyer, so if there's any lawyers out there, feel free to correct me. But from what I imagine is that AI will help me sort of read through these very dense readings, very dense briefs, maybe even draft up these like heavy, long documents.
Yeah.
But they're not going to replace like the interaction, speaking with clients, like actually being in court, because there's a really big.
I think humans have this huge function of audit.
Yeah.
Okay, but we're the ones with the critical thinking skills and the ability to like call BS, right?
Yeah.
Like you could read through something and I think that's where we're really going to come into play.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It's funny that you mentioned critical thinking, because I think the AI is also really affecting our ability to critical think. And that's something that I've noticed even at Harvard.
Yeah.
There's lots of students that are now relying on ChatGPT to sort of make decisions for them and sort of think through their assignments.
Right.
Which is scary, because you do lose some of that like brain power the more and more you use it. And if you use it as if you use it as a crutch rather than a tool, then that becomes really dangerous for your critical thinking abilities. So it's definitely
Fascinating.
we're definitely at an inflection point. I think we're still really early, but I'm excited to see how this continues to develop.
Right. Fascinating. All right. Well, tell you what, let's take another break. We'll go out there and hear from our sponsors, and we'll come back and talk a little bit more with you here in the future. Very good.
Sounds good.
Fascinating stuff. Hey, Josh, have you heard of downtownthedalles.org?
I haven't. Who are they?
Well, it's part of the Dalles Main Street. They have a new website to connect you to local retailers, neighbors, and friends in the downtown business core. It's downtownthedalles.org. Again, that's downtownthedalles.org. The website offers an A to Z listing of our neighbors and friends for all sorts of retail and service businesses here in the Dalles. Restaurants, florists, fun and exciting retail, music, antiques, clothes, and more. It's all here. Experience the magic of downtown the Dalles. Brought to you by the Dalles Main Street, uplifting businesses through promotional events, improvements, grants, and networking.
What was that website one more time?
That's downtownthedalles.org.
What I've seen in
All right.
yeah.
Got us. Hey, and we're back here with the CCC News podcast with Yahir, recent graduate from Harvard. And we were just talking about a little bit about AI and that capacity and that kind of thing. And on that note, and we were talking there in the break, and AI kind of like in regards to ChatGPT, and that kind of thing, like in writing and that kind of thing, we were talking about how that can kind of make people mentally lazy to some degree, and it's something to be kind of pretty careful of, right?
Yeah.
So fascinating. So so a pretty interesting period of time to be living in.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, hey, here's another question for you.
Yeah,
Getting into and graduating from Harvard is an incredible accomplishment, right? Of course it is. Yeah. We're all very, very proud of you.
Thank you.
Especially considering the odds. Now that you've reached that goal, how do you reflect on what it means? And how do you make sure achievements like this don't just mark a finish line, but inspire something greater for yourself and others coming after you?
The biggest takeaway for me is that it proves to me that anything is possible.
Uh-huh.
Coming from, I was born and raised here in the Dalles. Technically Hood River. I was born in Hood River.
Okay.
But I was raised in the Dalles. I don't have like a crazy extensive preparatory school background. My parents aren't, I'm first generation student. So I didn't have the background that a lot of students that typically get into Harvard have, right? And for me to be able to even dream about getting into Harvard, it was like, oh, come on, like let's be real now, right? But the fact that I got in and now have graduated from Harvard, it proves to me that there's nothing that I can't do. And rather than how you say have this serve as a finish line, it serves to me as a starting point. To continue dreaming big, to continue reaching for the next big milestone. And that's something that I think it's instilled in a lot of Harvard students. You're surrounded by some of the most ambitious kids in the world. And so your job never really feels done. There's always, the next big thing. Now that we graduated, it's like, okay, so now where am I going to work? And how am I going to climb that corporate ladder? How am I going to get that research position? It's just what's next.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of probably the biggest takeaway for me is just, anything is possible.
Yeah. It's so important to go out and do hard things.
Yeah.
Like that's the one thing that's just served me very well. I talked about picking rock. Well, go pick rock for 12 hours and see how you do mentally.
Yeah.
Especially when it's 100 degrees out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a physical thing, but I do believe it builds mental,
you definitely build resilience.
Resilience.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
the word. And my daughters, like Emily hiked the PCT, and Celia's doing it right now.
Wow.
And I asked them, and I don't think they quite knew what the goal or the end game was on that. And it took me a while to kind of figure out it, but it's that basic. It's just going out and doing something hard, and then having, like you said, that basis to build on. It's like, the next time you're doing something hard, you're like, well, I did that, so why can't I do this?
Exactly. I think the most difficult part is just taking that first step, and that's something that I've seen a lot of. I mean, I go back to the high school every year for the college panel that they have here.
Oh, great!
And I mean, I enjoy speaking to the students. But I've also had the opportunity to speak with and volunteer with students back in Boston. And one of the biggest differences that I've seen is that there is a lack of confidence in oneself and the students here to sort of take that next step, to apply to that college, to sort of dream big.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure why. I think maybe it's just because of the lack of exposure.
Yeah.
I guess that's probably it. Just lack of exposure. They don't really see that as a real possibility that's in the books for them.
Yeah.
But at least for me, I think that's the most difficult part. Just being able to sort of like see that as something achievable.
Yeah.
And
I think like when I think back to when you applied to Harvard, and I think, was it Bill Noonan that said, hey, no, you should try for this? And you're like, well, you know, and you're kind of like...
Yeah, I mean, I was also guilty of this, so I'm not saying...
No, but my point is there that you had this person who's giving you that little push, right?
Yes, it was all thanks to Mr. Noonan. Because I remember he was assigned as my Aspire mentor, and we chatted about sort of my college prospects. And I had to give him a preliminary college list of places I was looking at. And they were all like local, like regional schools, UW, UO, UP, things like that. And he was the one who's like, okay, that's a good list.
Right.
Have you ever considered schools like Harvard, like Stanford, MIT?
Yeah.
And I remember I laughed at it.
You laughed, right? Yeah.
Yeah, no. And then
I've done that.
it was like, oh, come on now, let's be serious here. But I wasn't planning on applying, but Mr. Noonan got his master's at Harvard. And so I thought it would be really cute to just surprise him and say, hey, I applied to your alma mater. So I applied on a whim. I didn't run my essays through him because I wanted it to be a surprise. And then one day, after I applied, because I applied on January 1st or 2nd. Like on January 3rd, I was like, hey, by the way, I applied to Harvard. And he's like, oh, cool, great. And I mean, the rest is history. But
That's fascinating.
Yeah,
I didn't know that part of the story.
Oh, well, there you go.
Oh, yeah.
It was not very well thought out. That application was. And actually, this is kind of funny because at the school you get into, you can see your admissions file.
Yeah.
And so I had the opportunity to read my Harvard admissions file and see what the admissions officer said about me and the comments that my interviewer said. And the one comment that sticks out to me was the essay that I wrote the essay that I wrote that I didn't run through, Bill.
Yeah.
They specifically noted, they were like, "Oh, this one's a little rough around the edges, but the idea is there."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh man, that's kind of funny."
Yeah, but they could see the character through the grammar, right?
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of one of those things. It's like you can work with anybody long as they have strong character. You know, they're truthful and punctual. There's like these things, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And you can always build on that.
Yeah.
Huh.
There's something to work with, I guess, what they saw. But yeah.
Yeah. So here's an analogy question I always throw at my kids, and it's like it seems like anything you do in life, whether you're running a mile or you're trying to finish a course or you're trying to complete 4 years at Harvard, there's always this beginning, kind of middle area, and then an ending, right? And in the beginning, you're excited and you have a lot of energy, and then there's this middle part where you're like, at least for me anyways, I'm like, okay, this is hard, and it's hard, and you're in it, and you're trying to get through it, and there's always a low point. It seems like that, like how am I going to get myself through this to it and get to that finish? And then there's that last like burst, when you see the finish line, or the goal becomes clear to you,
Right.
and like you all of a sudden have this energy and you can finish and kick, right? Like you always, save that last burst of energy for that last, 50 yards or what have you. Taking that analogy, can you apply that to your 4 years at Harvard? And is there a lesson in that came out of it for you?
I think I would have to, like, if we wanted to get detailed, I would have to separate it into separate my social life with my academic life with my professional life. I think they all had different journeys, different development stages.
Yeah.
But if I were to sort of compress it all into 4 years at Harvard, I would
Big ass.
I would say that, I mean, have you heard of the Sour Patch Kids slogan? First it's sour, then sweet. I don't know if you've heard of that.
No, I haven't, but I like it.
Well, I think that's how I would describe it. I think first it was very sour. I think I struggled a lot to adapt, to sort of learn the ways of Harvard, I guess, because it was a lot of big changes. It was me moving away from home.
Yeah.
It was me moving across the country. It was me starting college. It was me being independent. It was a lot of really big changes at one time. And so I struggled a lot at first.
Yeah.
And so, it reflected a little bit in my grades. It reflected in my social life. It was sour. It was very sour. But after a year or two, I kind of got the hang of things. I started finding my community, started finding myself, and I started getting to swing things. Started getting to swing things. Started finding, the study habits that worked for me. Started finding the extracurriculars in which I felt at home at, where I felt I was making an impact, and as I started, getting more and more comfortable, things started, just falling into place and started becoming a lot more sweet. I started enjoying my time there a lot more. Not to say it was easy. I think obviously in my academics, as I progressed in my concentration and what I was majoring in, it became a lot more difficult, right? Upper level courses and all that. But I would say just overall, the latter half of my college career was a lot sweeter.
All right.
So that's how I would put it. First it's sour, then it's sweet.
Right on. Yeah. I love it. I love you coming back with a different analogy because that's
right. No copyright. But yeah.
Right. Oh, very good. Yeah. Well. Yeah. So at this point, you're looking. You're going to go out in the job market. You're looking at maybe working for a couple of years, and then you're thinking about law school.
Yeah.
Do you know where you want to go to law school?
I'd like to come back to the West Coast.
Okay.
Stanford? Sanford would be lovely. It would be like they're definitely my number one sort of reach.
Yeah.
Sanford would be great. I have a cousin right now that's at Berkeley Law School.
Okay.
And she really likes the SF area. She's liking Berkeley. So I think that's also an option that I'd like to explore. But more generally, I think West Coast would be ideal. But I mean, I moved across the country. I'd be willing to move again.
Yeah.
Chicago, Northwestern.
Right.
Yeah.
Chicago, University of Chicago.
Yeah.
Oh,
UC
wow.
University of Chicago.
That's heady too.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
But yeah, I think so. I'm still like early, still kind of like seeing where I want. I think it also depends on where I end up after like working after college and if I want to stay in said city.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right. Very good. Yeah. Well, what a fascinating conversation. You've come such a long ways. It was so great to see you again after 4 years and all that. So you hear, I mean, very inspirational and like kind of going out here. Like, I guess, I mean, I kind of go back to that original story and you kind of mentioned it there a second ago. You said like, if I can do it, that means anybody else from the Dalles coming up, they can do hard things too, like this. And
100%.
And you kind of said, I want to kind of see that through. I kind of want to make good on that, I think is what your point was there. But let's throw some advice out to, anybody who's watching this today about, how to, take a shot, find the courage, or you tell me about that.
I mean, this is gonna sound super cliche and corny, but genuinely just dream big. Dream big and take that risk. I think I got really lucky in that I was surrounded by a very supportive network at the high school, and they were the ones who kind of pushed me and encouraged me. That supportive network is still there.
Yeah.
It's just up to the students to listen to them and to truly believe in themselves to be able to, take that next step. So honestly, I would just say, listen to Miss Comerford, listen to Mr. Noonan, listen to your mentors, listen to the people at the high school, and maybe they'll change your life like they changed mine.
Yeah. Great words. Well, thank you so much, Yahir, for coming today. What a fascinating trip. Maybe you come back and see us again sometime.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm in town for a bit, so
right.
If you guys need anything, I'm more than happy to come back. Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you for having me.
You got it. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in to CCC News. Hey, Josh, have you heard of downtownthedalles.org?
I haven't. Who are they?
Well, it's part of the Dalles Main Street. They have a new website to connect you to local retailers, neighbors, and friends in the downtown business core. It's downtownthedalles.org. Again, that's downtownthedalles.org. The website offers an A to Z listing of our neighbors and friends for all sorts of retail and service businesses here in the Dalles. Restaurants, florists, fun and exciting retail, music, antiques, clothes, and more. It's all here. Experience the magic of Downtown the Dalles. Brought to you by the Dalles Main Street, uplifting businesses through promotional events, improvements, grants, and networking.
What was that website one more time?
That's downtownthedalles.org.